Some ancient people did not bury their dead. They ate a small piece of them, on purpose, out of love. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, that fact will not shock you anymore. It will make sense. Death is the one thing every human has always had to face. No matter how far back you go, no matter which continent, every group of humans has had to answer the same question. What do we do with the body? And the answers they came up with are stranger and more human than almost anything you would guess. Let's start at the very beginning. You are standing in a cave, deep in the mountains, more than 50,000 years ago. A member of your group has died. There is no priest here, no coffin, no church. Just you, the body, and the cold stone walls around you. So what do? You dig a shallow pit into the cave floor. You lay the body inside, curled on its side, almost like it is sleeping. And then you do something that seems almost too gentle for a world this harsh. You place flowers around the body. Bright ones, wild ones, picked from just outside the cave. This is not a guess. Cave floors from this exact period have shown pollen from several different flowering plants, clustered tightly around ancient human remains. Whether every detail is fully agreed upon by scientists or not, one thing is clear. Burying the dead with care, and not just tossing them aside, goes back further than almost anyone expects. But flowers are just the beginning. Some groups went much further. You are living in a small village, thousands of years later, somewhere near the Mediterranean coast. Someone in your family dies. You do not bury them right away. Instead, you lay the body out in the open air, and you wait. You wait for nature to do its work. Weeks pass. The body is exposed to the elements, sometimes to birds, sometimes simply to time itself, until only the bones remain. Only then, once every trace of flesh is gone, do you gather the bones by hand. You clean them carefully, and you bury them or store them in their final resting place. This is called secondary burial. And here's the part that surprises most people. This was not seen as disrespectful. It was seen as necessary. The body had to be stripped down to what could last forever, the bones, before it could truly rest. Flesh was temporary. Bone was eternal. Now here is where the story gets stranger. In some of the very first towns humans ever built, people did not send their dead away at all. You live in a mud brick house, packed tightly with dozens of others, in one of the oldest cities on Earth. Someone in your household dies. And instead of carrying them out to a graveyard, you bury them right there, under the floor, beneath the very room where you eat and sleep and raise your children. Your grandmother is not in a cemetery across town. She is under your feet. And it gets even more surprising. In some of these same communities, before burial, people would remove the skull. They would clean it and then cover the face in plaster, rebuilding the features by hand. Eyes, nose, lips. Using shells for the eyes, so the face almost seemed to be looking back at you. These plastered skulls were not hidden away. They were kept, sometimes displayed, passed down. A face from the family's past, quite literally kept in the home, generation after generation. Imagine growing up with your great-great-grandfather's face sitting on a shelf, not as a decoration, as a member of the household who simply happened to be dead. But not every funeral was quiet or gentle. Some were terrifying. You are standing at the edge of a massive open pit, somewhere in ancient Mesopotamia, more than 4,000 years ago. A king or a queen has died. And this is not a small burial. This is enormous. Dozens of people walk into that pit, dressed in fine clothing, jewelry gleaming in the torchlight. Musicians carrying instruments, guards, attendants, and they do not walk out again. Excavated royal tombs from this exact region have revealed dozens of bodies buried alongside a single ruler. Servants, soldiers, and musicians, seemingly accompanying their leader into the next world. Some evidence suggests many of them may have taken a substance before the burial, calmly, almost ceremonially, rather than being forced at the very last moment. Whether every person went willingly is something historians still debate. But the pattern itself is not in question. Death for a king sometimes meant death for dozens of others, meant to serve him forever. This is one of the most shocking funeral practices in all of ancient history, and it was not rare. Versions of it appear in multiple ancient civilizations, from Mesopotamia to parts of ancient China, to certain African kingdoms centuries later. When someone at the very top of society died, entire households sometimes went with them. Let's shift now to a very different kind of shock. Not violence, preservation. You are standing on a windswept desert coastline in what is now northern Chile, more than 7,000 years ago, long before the pyramids of Egypt were ever built. A child in your community has died, and your people do something remarkable. You do not simply bury the body. You take it apart, carefully, piece by piece. You remove the organs. You reinforce the frame with sticks, almost like a support structure inside the body itself. You reattach the skin. You paint the entire body from head to foot, sometimes in black, sometimes in deep red. And then you attach a clay mask over the face. This is not Egypt. This is thousands of years before Egypt. The Chinchorro people of the Andes were mummifying their dead, including children, and even babies who never survived birth, long before any pharaoh ever wore a crown. And that raises the obvious question. Why go through all of that effort for a child who never lived past infancy? Because for these people, death did not erase a person from the family. The body needed to be preserved, decorated, and kept close, because that person was still, in every meaningful sense, still part of the community. Which brings us to the moment in this story that shocks people the most. In parts of the Amazon rainforest and in parts of Papua New Guinea, some communities practice something anthropologists call endocannibalism, the ritual consumption of a small part of a deceased loved one by their own family. Say that sentence out loud, and it sounds horrifying. Say it slowly, and understand the reasoning behind it, and it becomes something else entirely. In these communities, the fear was not that a body would decay. The fear was that a loved one's spirit, their essence, their place among the living, would simply vanish once buried in the ground or burned to ash. So instead, in a small ritual portion, a piece of the deceased was consumed by close family members. Not strangers, not enemies, only the people who loved them most. The goal was never violence. The goal was continuity. Keeping a piece of someone inside the people who loved them, instead of letting them disappear completely into the earth. Outsiders labeled this practice as savage for centuries. But look closely at the intention behind it, and it starts to look less like horror, and strangely, more like grief, taken to its most literal, physical extreme. By now, a pattern should be forming in your mind. Flowers laid gently over a body in a cave. Bones cleaned by hand and kept close. Ancestors buried beneath the family home. Faces rebuilt in plaster so a loved one could still, in some sense, look back at you. Servants walking willingly into a king's tomb. Children mummified and painted so they would never simply vanish. A small ritual piece of a loved one, kept within the family instead of buried alone. Every single one of these practices looks shocking from the outside. But every single one of them was solving the exact same problem. The unbearable idea that someone you loved could simply cease to exist. Different climates, different tools, different beliefs about what happens after death. But everywhere you look, in every era, humans refuse to simply let their dead disappear. That is the real reveal hiding behind every strange funeral custom in this video. It was never really about the method. It was never about flowers, or plaster, or bones, or preservation, or even that one final, unthinkable act of remembrance. It was about refusing to say goodbye completely. And if you think about it, that instinct has never actually gone away. You do not eat a piece of anyone today, but you keep photographs. You keep a voice message you cannot bring yourself to delete. You visit a grave just to feel close to someone again. The methods changed completely over tens of thousands of years. The reason behind them never has.